All right, so we talk about wisdom. Of course, you see on the screen, wisdom is humble. Is pride in our culture, so not in a biblical sense, but just culturally, is pride a virtue or a vice? Yeah, culturally it's a virtue. Let me take it a step farther. We have a couple different definitions, uses of the word pride or proud. So define for me, how do you understand pride? Give me a definition of pride. So as a viewpoint of yourself, that you are good and better than others. What if I say, I am proud of you, pleased with something you did? What if I say, I'm proud of the sermon I preached this morning? Okay, I think I'm really good. We use the word pride or proud in a couple ways that I think we're using the wrong word to describe a good thing. And so I'm proud of you. For example, I'm pleased with what you did, or you've done a good job. It's something of that nature of I'm encouraging you. Thank you. You did a great job. You've worked hard. You've succeeded. You made it. You graduated. Congratulations. And so yet we do use it. Even though I say it's illegitimate, we do use it somewhat legitimately because there's often is that sense of self-satisfaction in what somebody's done. Making something and saying, I'm proud of that. It can be, that's what I wanted. It came out well. And it could be nothing more than that. I like it. I think it came out as I envisioned it. It works the way I wanted it to. It looks the way I wanted it to. Whatever it is, it was a success. And yet sometimes we use that because of the sense of self-satisfaction. And yet we do. So I would say those two uses are ambiguous in the sense that they could be entirely negative. They could sometimes be fine, not a negative thing at all. It's just, I would say, the wrong word. Oftentimes there's probably a mix of, a little bit of inappropriate self-satisfaction or self-gratification mixed with an appropriate, good job, to somebody, or yes, that's the way I wanted it to come out. There is certainly the inappropriate pride of making myself too important. And we are confronted with that daily. And we are now being taught this everywhere. And in fact, I think it was 2 nights ago, maybe 3 nights ago, I was opening the Cheerios box and I noticed the back of it. And I actually cut it out and brought it here. Because they had on the back of the Cheerios box a bunch of self-affirmation statements. And these I just kept together because I thought, okay, it's a little bit cheesy, but I mean, they're writing it for the kids. It's not that big a deal. I grow and learn every day. I make the day brighter. Soy Feliz is I am happy. Or either that or soy sauce is happy. I'm not sure which, but I am happy. So there's definitely self-centered. There certainly is focusing on self there, but all right, I'll look at it in the best light possible and say they're just trying to encourage kids. And so those are they're self-centered, but I'm not going to make a big deal out of those. And then there were other ones. I'll just start with this one. My best is good enough. And I thought, well, that's not true. That's just not true at all. We're teaching kids. I understand, I think, some of what they're trying to get across. Do your best. And, if you've done your best, great. But sometimes it's not good enough. Sometimes I'm going to do my best and play basketball against a 7-foot guy. I'm going to do my best and he's going to cream me. It's just that simple. It's not good enough. Sometimes my best, when I'm trying to accomplish something and I can't, it's not good enough. So that one I think it's just dead wrong. My perspective is unique and important. And once again, it is dead wrong, and it's even more driving home the self-centeredness. Just because you have a perspective doesn't mean it's important. It may be unique, but it doesn't mean it's important. Carolyn complimented my suit and tie today, and I told her Ruth picked it out. I have a perspective on matching. It's actually not, at least according to everybody else, it's not important. It may be unique, but it's not important. It's not right. And I don't have and we get to serious things, I might have a perspective about how the police should be run in Manistee. Is it important? Do I have a right to voice that perspective? Even in our culture, yes, technically I do. I have no credentials and no knowledge of actual policing. I've listened to a bunch of Dragnet episodes. That does not qualify me to tell people how they should run a police force or interact with the community. And so my perspective is ultimately of no value because I have no authority and I have no expertise in the area. Same thing with cancer. I might have a perspective on what things you should eat if you have cancer. I have no medical training and I have no dietary training. It's wrong. And to teach kids and teach adults that because I have a perspective, it should be heard is a completely wrong-headed, and it is fueling the arrogance of ignorance. And then the last one, creo en mí, however you say that in Spanish. It's actually, I believe in me. I looked it up on Google. Google said it was, I believe in me. Again, just completely self-centered. And what Cheerios is doing, and under the guise of affirmations, is saying, you are most important. Make you more. And what the Bible says is the complete opposite of that. It says, make you less. It's just that simple. The path to wisdom is through humility. Let you look at those, remind you of the various kinds of parallelism, the repeating that says the same thing, contrasting, offers a different view between the two lines, developing, second line adds new information, illustrating one of the lines uses a figure of speech, building, each line builds significantly or substantially on the previous line. Pivoting is three or more lines. It really turns on the middle line. The middle line looks both forward and backwards. Mirroring restates the first line, but restates it basically in reverse order. The cause and effect. So if you do this, then this. And then there's sometimes just a formal parallelism, which just is a statement of truth in two or more lines. So these are the kinds of parallelism you expect to see in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs 11:2 says, when pride comes, then comes shame, but with the humble is wisdom. So what kind of parallelism is this? Okay, contrasting, and how do you know that? Yeah, we have the word but. It's almost always is the clue. This is a contrasting parallelism. And so with that, remind us that we have one perspective, one thing stated, and then a differing view. Not necessarily the exact opposite, but certainly the contrasting view or contrasting truth is presented. And so we have here a couple things going on in this verse. So the first line, is first two phrases there up to the semicolon. What's the subject of that sentence? Okay, pride. What about the second line, the second after the semicolon? Humble. So we have the contrast between pride and humble. Now I know that's not an exact contrast. It'd be, if you will, a perfect contrast would be pride and humility, or proud, humble. But the idea is that of pride versus humility. So when pride comes, then also comes what? Shame. There. So, and we actually, the way this is worded, it's 4 Hebrew words. And to kind of put it simply in English, come pride, come disgrace. This is, I think the real short Hebrew version, it's a little bit choppier, but I think it's a lot catchier. Come pride, come shame, come disgrace. So what is the result of pride, according to this proverb? Shame. Then you have the second line. It actually says, but with humble wisdom. And so the verb there is not present. It's been supplied to make sense of it. And I think in this case, it's been wrongly supplied. I think it actually should supply the same verb in the first line. But with the humble comes wisdom. But the result or the connection, the partner with the humble is what? Wisdom. So if you would like to be wise, what must you be? Humble. If you are proud, what will you be? Yeah, disgraced, shamed. So what that verse says is this attitude, it has exactly the opposite effect of what is desired. I'm not going to actually, if you will, improve myself, be bettered, better the world, better my relationships through pride. I'm going to cause harm. I'm going to shame myself through this. And so this isn't for 5-year-old terminology, but self-exaltation is self-defeating. So the one who attempts to lift himself up, Scriptures tells us, will be cast down. And to say it another way, the one who lowers himself is wise. The arrogant bring disgrace on themselves. And not only in this proverb, but in many proverbs, Scripture, we simply see that pride is opposed to wisdom. And this is a crucial concept in the book of Proverbs, is that pride is not just, apart from wisdom, it's not just a hindrance to wisdom. Pride is the enemy of wisdom. If I am all of that, whatever I think that is, then I am not going to get to learn wisdom. It's real simple. I don't need wisdom. If my perspective is already unique and important, why do I need to learn wisdom? Why do I need expertise? Really. This is an easy target. I recognize I picked some things that are just easy to pick at. But they made it so easy because they put it on the back of a cereal box. But if I have a right to voice my opinion about anything and everything and expect it be listened to, then why do I need to go learn anything about the subject? Why do I need to investigate the facts of the matter? Just a simple example from this weekend. I know there was a shooting in Minneapolis, an ICE, or I think it was Border Patrol agent shot a protester. I don't know any details about it, except there are a lot of people offering opinions about it and are making claims. And again, I don't know anything about it. I can't speak to the truth or error of those claims. But you go on social media, and I didn't even go on social media, and I was overwhelmed with this stuff's all over social media apparently. And people are voicing an opinion about what happened based upon somebody else's reports and probably a video clip. I know there's a video clip out there. And so whatever portion of the event that was captured on video, based on those little bit of things, they're voicing an opinion, which, according to that, is unique and important and should be heard. Why bother to learn the facts? Why bother to learn the law? I mean, why? Who cares? I don't need to. Pride. That's what that boils down to, pride. I already know everything I need to know, and you should listen to me, is absolutely opposed to wisdom. And so how do we take that and just simply apply those two principles? Come pride, come shame. But with the humble is wisdom. With the humble comes wisdom. To be wise, you must be humble. And really, that really is everything that this verse says. To put it in a couple of different terms, the path of promotion is downward. And here we're talking genuine promotion. Promotion in those things which are pleasing to God. Promotion in those things which are most valuable. It's not an upward path. It's a path of lowering self. And then the other side of this is we're looking at, if you will, from the outside. We should not think little. We should not belittle the humble. They possess wisdom. Their humility itself speaks to a measure of wisdom. And so even though certainly our culture belittles the lowly, thinks less of those who would humble themselves. It says if you want to get ahead, you have to push, you have to scramble, you have to climb. And we should not adopt the culture's attitude towards humility. We must have a biblical attitude towards it in our own life and when we meet the humble and interact with them. A few other lessons from Proverbs in humility. I'm just going to mention them. But Proverbs teaches us that humility precedes honor. It's not pride. Again, it's not self-promotion. It is humility. It says simply in Proverbs 15:33, before honor is humility. I mean, that's exactly what that point says. Humility comes first. Humility preserves honor. Again, that which is genuinely honorable and worthwhile. And so the Proverbs 29:23 says, a man's pride will bring him low, but the humble in spirit will retain honor. We can see examples of this all around us in our culture. You see somebody is lifted up in a position and then he begins to act arrogantly. And he may even keep the position, but he loses the respect because of his actions. Many times he loses the position itself. Proverbs 16, that the one who lifts himself up will be brought low. So Scriptures teaches that it says simply pride goes before a fall. Proverbs 16:19, humility is better than riches. You think about that. They offer anybody on the street $1 million or humility. Which one are they going to take? Which one does Proverbs teach us to take? Humility is far better than riches. In Proverbs 12, verse 9, just a very realistic perspective, food is better than honor. It says, better is the one who is slighted, but has a servant, than he who honors himself, but lacks bread. So if I can be famous or fed, which one should you seek? I mean, it's a real basic principle that we recognize in just I think a little bit of common sense. You say, well, you can starve to death and be and I know some famous people have starved themselves to death. You can starve to death and be famous, or you could be unknown but fed. Solomon says, take the food. Sit down and eat something. Proverbs 21:24. A proud and haughty man, scoffer is his name. He acts with arrogant pride. I think this is one of the most important verses in Proverbs about this man, the scoffer. You remember in talking in Proverbs, you have three kinds of fools. Really, so the broad middle category is the fool. Anybody remember what the first category is, if you will, the lowest level of fool, the one we might be most optimistic about? Yeah, the simple one. So the simple one, if he chooses wrongly, moves into folly. And when the fool, as he is confirmed in his folly, he begins to be a scoffer or a scorner, depending on your Bible translation. It's the same word, same person. So we have here this scoffer, this worst of the fools. And this proverb gives us two words here, proud and haughty. So fools are proud. I mean, it's really that simple. Fools are proud. Proud, in this case, is an exaggerated sense of his own self-importance, of his own importance. Pride is an exaggerated sense of his own importance. And that word exaggerated is valid and important. Because the Bible doesn't teach us to ignore reality. And so I'm a pastor. And whatever importance you want to put on that, it's maybe a little bit off the subject here, but I'm a pastor. And with that comes duties, responsibilities. I'm on the internet. Not something I've ever desired. And yet, I am on the internet. I have, a audience here. I have an audience online. And for me to look at that and to say, oh, I'm going to ignore those. Those don't matter. I mean, really, if I said my Sunday morning audience, it doesn't matter, would that be wise? No, it really wouldn't. Now, to clarify that, is my Sunday morning audience my primary audience? No, my primary audience is God. My supreme goal must be His pleasure, and so that if the Sunday morning audience is not pleased with me, that's of secondary importance to whether or not God is pleased with me. However, I cannot say, God is my primary audience, I don't care about anything else. And so, as a practical example of how this works, at least in my own ministry, because there is a position with responsibilities there, and then I have to give attention to those. And even if they might be, in this case, responsibilities that are more noteworthy, more public, more visible, maybe more likely to gain others' attention and praise. I can't ignore them. I can't say, well, no, I don't want to be praised of men. I don't want anybody to walk out of the service and say, good sermon. So I'm going to do this. And God said, a false witness shall perish, but the man who hears him will speak endlessly. That's my whole sermon. And nobody's blessed by that. And so get back to how this applies to pride. There's, again, and I don't like the word importance because absolutely pastoring and Christian ministry is shepherding, is serving. But if I exaggerate my importance, if I ignore my responsibilities in every respect, I'm not fulfilling them. I can't say, well, I have no audience, and the audience doesn't exist, or the audience doesn't matter. I have to say it's there. I have to minister to that. And in light of that, it's when I exaggerate it and begin to say, look how important I am. 3 people on the internet watched me. I am so important. And I begin to vaunt myself as some noteworthy preacher or teacher or author or some other thing, exaggerating that audience and that importance. That's when it becomes a problem. So pride is not saying realistically, here's my responsibilities, here's my abilities and my gifts, and I'm going to use them as I ought. Pride makes too big a deal out of them. And in part, as Carolyn's reminded us, in part because I forget that they are from God, entrusted to me as a stewardship to accomplish His purposes. So, but haughty then is related, but it's a deep self-centeredness, self-sufficient, that I am all I need, that I am, that really the world does revolve around me. And so these are the things that Solomon is talking about when he says a proud and haughty man. Kenneth Aiken, I think, really summarized this well when he said the proud man reckons he is a cut above other people. The proud man thinks he's a better person because of whatever thing he possesses that he thinks so highly of. Proverbs 21:24. We have 3 lines. I'm going to take them a line at a time. So what is the subject of this first line? The man. So we have the man, and then there are adjectives. What's the first description of this man? He's proud. Second description? He's haughty. So we have this one who exaggerates his own importance, who is self-centered and self-sufficient. We have the next line, the second line, scoffer is his name. So what is the antecedent of the pronoun? What's the his referring to? I think it's going back to man. Yeah, going back to man there, so that you have his tying back to man. So the proud and haughty man, he has a name. What's his name? Scoffer. And this is important in the theology of Proverbs. I'm not drawing this out today so much, but just to identify it for you. This scoffer, when you see it, or scoffer or scorner in Proverbs, it's talking about this man, the proud and haughty one, the arrogant, self-sufficient, self-centered, exaggerated individual who thinks he's better than everyone. He is the scoffer. And then the third line, he acts with an arrogant pride. So antecedent of he, still going back to the same thing, this proud, haughty man. And then we have, what's the verb? He acts. So now we're learning something about his deed. So the first line, we're learning about his character. The third line, we're learning about his deeds, what he does. What's the subject of the prepositional phrase in that third line? So pride, then, is the subject of that phrase. So he acts with pride. What kind of pride? Arrogant pride. So as if pride was not enough, it says this is arrogant pride. So in that verse, what words are related to conceit? Haughty, proud, arrogant, pride. So in both the first and the last line, we have 2 different words for this conceitedness, this egocentric individual, the scoffer. What do you think that Solomon wants us to know about the scoffer? Yes, he is a very, very proud man. Today, he would be called a narcissist. And I think If you define narcissism according to Proverbs, I think it's a very good term, very good description of him. His life revolves around him. He is the star in the middle of his life, and everything else circles it. That's what this verse is saying. And so let me just give you these principles, as they're maybe not quite so obvious as some of the other ones here, but this one should be very obvious. Overwhelming pride is the mark of the scorner. So if you're dealing with individuals, and this is valid as you're interacting with people and you're thinking, I think this might be a scorner in the proverbial sense. Is there an overwhelming pride? And by that I mean all of us are proud. All of us are sinfully proud. But we've all met those people that are just completely self-absorbed. There is an overwhelmingness to their pride that they can never hear criticism. They can never understand what somebody else is saying if it's not already something they know. They have no ability to understand the sorrow of somebody else. They can't, if you will, they can't ever put themselves in somebody else's shoes. Everything is about them, what they think and what they want to do. When you see one whose life is characterized by this extreme self-absorption, I think we can rightly call them a scorner or a scoffer. We also know from the flow of Proverbs, from the way Proverbs uses this terminology, that the greatest of fools is the scoffer. And so this arrogant man, this one with this overwhelming pride, is the chief fool, the greatest of fools. And so when you're dealing with one of these individuals, there should be a recognition biblically, this is a fool. And they should shape how you interact with him. I don't think we've yet covered how we interact with fools. It's farther down in our study here. But recognizing that this is a scorner, this is the greatest of fools, should shape how we interact with him. It should also be a significant warning to us of the dangers of pride. Because pride moves us down that path of folly. Pride it moves us down into the depths of foolishness. We also see the proud man acts proudly. It seems obvious, and yet we sometimes ignore the obvious. Somebody acts with great arrogance and say, well, he's a good man at heart. Proverbs says, go back and read Proverbs. What comes out of the heart? Proverbs chapter 4. Yeah, out of the heart is all the issues of life. All of our life. And rightly, Gene's pointing out that as Proverbs tells us, there's a direct connection from mouth to heart. There's a direct pipeline. So when somebody speaks proudly, we know there's pride in their heart. When somebody acts proudly, we know there's pride in their heart. You don't look at it and say, well, he's a good man at heart. No, he's a proud man at heart. That's why he's acting proud. And so, again, we recognize in our own lives. I don't want to just point this at, outward at somebody that you may know. When you and I speak proudly, it reflects a proud heart. When you and I act with arrogance, act as if nobody else matters, we're revealing pride in the heart. The self-sufficient are proud. And this is maybe a particularly challenging one. We live in a nation which still values independence. We certainly live in a region which values independence. And yet we also should recognize that none of us, no matter the most independent of us, are still incredibly dependent. I don't know of anybody who goes out, digs his own mine with, a tree stick, a stick that he's cut off the tree because he has nothing else, digs his own mine, smelts his own metal, forges his own tools, to cut his own timber, to build his own house. And then he goes out and uses all of his own resources. He's made his own arrows and his own bow to go out and kill his own food. Everyone is dependent in some way. So the person living as far off the grid as possible has a bank of batteries that he's bought from somewhere that he didn't build. He is, not one is truly independent. All of us are dependent on others to an incredible amount, just for our daily living. Those who are self-sufficient, those who imagine they depend on none else and don't need anyone else, are stupidly proud. They're proud in a way that just closes their eyes to reality. We also see that the unteachable are proud. I didn't put the proverb down with this one, but Proverbs clearly teaches that those who will not listen, those who will not be taught, are proud. So I'd say it another way, the know-it-all is proud. The self-important are proud. Michael Zigarelli said, the humble can see himself in others from God's perspective. He also says, recognize that despite any educational or experiential advantages we have, we are in fact not superior. And that second quote there is really important. We all have different educations, and we all have different areas of expertise and a practice. And so that you know things I know nothing about. You do things I could never do. And it goes the other way too. I know things that you may have never heard about, never studied. Able to do things that maybe you've never been able to do. But it does not make you or I superior. We're not inherently greater humans because of the advantages that we have, whether they be natural or whether they be acquired. We are not a better form of person. We simply have a different set of skills, ability, training, practice. Again, given to us by God. And so this humility recognizes whatever I have. I honestly, should be able to honestly say, yes, God has enabled me to do this. But it doesn't make me something greater than you. Just that simple. Proverbs 22:2. The Lord is the maker of them all. The rich and the poor alike, God has made them all. Ultimately, what this gets back to is not just God has given us all things, but He is the creator of each and every individual. And every person is created in God's image. And so when I lift myself up and I begin to say, I am greater than you, I am beginning to vaunt myself above the image of God. I am beginning to sneer at and scorn the image of God. I am, in fact, defaming God when I lift myself up in pride. Because God has made every individual that we interact with, and He has made them in His image. So the application, be humble. Right? Should at this point be a no-brainer. Be humble. Maintain a right perspective of who and what you are. There really should be some honesty in who and what you are. In recognizing goods and bad. So this is not a I'm such a terrible person, I can't do anything right. Why am I even here burdening the earth with my presence? I am such a waste of space. No, that's pride from a different angle, actually. Still self-absorbed. But to rightly say, I have these abilities. God has gifted me in this way. He's entrusted me with this. He's enabled me to do this. I can't do this. He didn't give me that ability. I don't have that. I'm not as, whatever as somebody else is. That right perspective that keeps us and reminds us that I am not as great as I'm tempted to think I am. Rely on others. And this is a hard one. And I didn't put on there, be willing to rely on others. Rely on others. And it helps chip away at that self-sufficiency when we actually rely on others to help, to do something. And not treating them as if they are servants, that we have earned the right for them to wait upon us, and they are so honored by their ability to wait on us. But simply relying on others to do what we can't do, to help us with the things that we need help with, to remind ourselves, I need somebody else. And listen to others. And that's a huge part of wisdom, of learning wisdom, is simply listening. Listening to what others are saying, hearing them. And I know I've talked about this with listening, and I'll remind us of it again. Not just staring at them, standing in their presence and staring at them and thinking your thoughts while their words are bouncing off your skull. But listening, hearing them, hearing what they're saying, seeking to the best of your ability to understand what they're saying, to learn from what they can teach. That's a big part of this humility that leads to wisdom. So a few other statements, biblical statements here. Pride is sin. I think that should be obvious. It is obvious to us, but pride is sin. The proud disgust God. The proud in heart are an abomination to the Lord. So we're not just talking about a hatred of the sin of pride. This is a revulsion, a disgust of the proud. Pride produces conflict. That's a huge one. You think about that in your life, in your marriages, in your relationships. Why is there conflict? Pride. And just, hopefully we don't need the reminder, but I'll remind us anyway, not just their pride. It's easy, we're in a conflict because you're so arrogant. Pride, the conflict comes because of our own pride. Pride precedes judgment. Say it another way, pride will be judged. It will be judged. One of the ways it's judged is through humiliation. Pride precedes humiliation. The proud will be cast down. Pride goes before a fall. And then Proverbs teaches us, do not seek your own praise. Don't move to the front as if everybody should see you. Don't seek the best seats at the feast, as Jesus taught us. Don't seek your own praise. And don't, it's also, we're not fishing for praise. Oh, that was terrible. I've never done such a bad job in my life. So somebody else will come along and say, no, you did really good. Just don't seek in any way your own praise. The height of human pride is it sinfully presumes itself to be a cut above God. That's ultimately what we're getting down to. And we go back to the very first sin. Lucifer's sin in heaven is, I will ascend. I will be like the Most High. That's ultimately where pride comes from. That satanic desire to be as great as or greater than God. And then Satan duping Eve and saying, you can be like God. And she's thinking, oh, I'm in for that. And pride, imagining that it's greater, that we are greater than we actually are, imagining that we are greater than God. And again, that's why God hates pride. So we must walk in humility. If we would be wise, we must first be humble.